Good evening and welcome to Coverero, the conversation table where we discuss matters and analyze issues. Our conversation tonight is centered on out-of-school children issues, challenges, and way forward. My name is Godwin Sunday, and we will dive into the conversation immediately after this break. Please stay with us. You're welcome back. Now, let's even put these out of school children issues in perspective by first looking at the background of this whole conversation. Now, the issue of out of school children in Nigeria is one of the country's most critical social and economic emergencies. According to data from UNESCO and UNICEF, Nigeria sits near the top of global rankings with an estimated 10 to 20 million children and youth out of the formal school system. Now, the crisis acts as a bottleneck to even this crisis, I beg your pardon, acts as a bottleneck for national development, trapping millions of young citizens in generational poverty and creating long-term gaps in the country's workforce and workspace. The crisis is heavily concentrated in the northern regions, particularly the northwest and northeast, driven by severe disruptions to daily life and systematic regional imbalances. In contrast, part of the southeast and south-south experience a specific trend of boy-child dropout where young males leave formal school early to pursue trade apprenticeship, despite the Universal Basic Education (UBE) Act declaring basic schooling free and compulsory. State and local authorities struggle to provide functional, accessible infrastructure. While tuition might technically be free in public primary schools, families are frequently slammed with hidden costs including levies, uniforms, textbooks, and exam fees. With the poverty rate hovering near 39%, these micro expenses make formal education completely unaffordable for many households. In recent times, mass kidnappings, banditry, and terrorist insurgency targeting schools, primarily in the north, have dealt a massive blow to safety. The fear of attacks forces long-term school closures and terrifies parents into keeping their children at home. Solving the out-of-school crisis is not just an educational goal, it is a national security and economic imperative. Without a deliberate, unified push by federal, state, and the local government, which serves as a treaty of government, to fully execute basic education policies, the country faces massive future manpower gaps that could cripple long-term economic growth. Tonight, with me to have this conversation is Professor Joseph, and he'll be helping us put all of these issues in perspective. Well, stay with us as the conversation begins immediately after this break. You're welcome back. Well, with me is Professor Joseph Ame. Professor, it's a delight to have you join me on Correro.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
Well, Prof, let's even start the conversation by first even X-raying the Nigerian educational system. Now, reports have it that Nigeria has one of the highest numbers of out-of-school children globally. What does this say about the state of the nation's education system as at today?
In fact, the state of Nigerian education system as at today, I can say, is in the state of quagmire. You know, according to UNICEF and the UNESCO report, shows in 2024 that Nigeria recorded the highest rate of out-of-school students, about 18 to 20 million out-of-school students in Nigeria. So it's a big problem. It's a big menace. Why is it a menace? It is a menace because it creates a ripple effect that affect national stability, national security. And what are the major causes of this problem? The number one cause of this problem is poverty. most parents in Nigeria cannot afford to pay their children's school fees. So it's a big problem. And, take an African country, for instance, maybe some countries in the African region, for instance, like Mozambique, Ethiopia, and Burundi, for instance. Burundi completely abolished payment of school fees. And that was done in sometime 2005, and the enrollment they got rose from 54% to 94% within 6 years. So it is still also possible in Nigeria for us, our government, to completely obliterate payment of school fees by implementing free education as implemented by UN Act, because the Child Right Act made it compulsory for a child to enjoy free and compulsory education. But if you discover that most states in Nigeria does not domesticate that act, and it's one of the biggest problems we are having. And another problem is the problem of insecurity, just as you rightly said. Insecurity, like in the northern part of Nigeria, for instance, the northeast, most schools, about thousands of schools, were shut down as a result of insecurity. So government needs to be proactive. They are doing their best, but they still need to do more to get these children to go back to school. So it's a very big problem.
Well, Prof, the figures still stand around 18.5 million out of school children.
And it's increasing.
In Nigeria. Well,
yes.
Let's just put that in perspective. But
yes.
looking at it from holistically, can we say that this challenge is largely coming from the government? Because few states in Nigeria still has basic education programs like free education in primary and secondary education, but then the numbers doesn't tend to even decrease looking at it from this light. Is it totally the problem of the government?
Yeah, I would say categorically that is a problem of the government, because this lack of political will. When there's a will, if the government if all these acts are being implemented, they may not eradicate it completely, but at least to a certain percentage.
So when you say is completely the responsibility
yes.
of the government,
yes.
in this regard, are you saying that the government should probably go from door to door in order to educate and orientate parents and compel them to send their children to school?
Yeah, if as I earlier told us that the Child Right Act, if domesticated in fact, enforcement of this right.
But the states that are already domesticated it.
Okay.
So
now
far,
enforcement, it is one thing to make a law, it is another thing to enforce it, to implement it. Implementation is what we are talking about. Because if the act makes it compulsory for children to enjoy free education, so government had to follow up by ensuring that they are enforced. So if these policies are enforced, then parents will be held responsible for their children that don't go to school.
Well, so Prof, when we look at the whole issue of out-of-school children right now, if we go by the statistics, it still tells us that right now we have about 10.2 million out-of-school children in primary school across the country. Now, while 8.1 million are junior secondary school age, that is ranging between the age of 18 and between age 18 downward. Those are the teenagers. Now, there's a trend right now where a lot of teenagers are towing the path of the Robert Kiyosaki's theory of rich and happy don't go to school. Prof, let me bring this to your doorstep. Is school education, formal education, a scam, even looking at the realities of what we have on the ground?
Well, I can never agree to that fact that formal education is a scam, because education is one of the panacea by which anyone who desires to be great in life. In fact, people that are places of high repute today, like the governors, presidents, the captains of industry, had acquired one skill or the other that catapulted them to where they are. So the transformative power of education in the lives of those who acquire it can neither be overemphasized nor underemphasized. So education can never be a scam.
So in a situation where you have young billionaires right now across the country that have informal education, we have a situation where a lot of young people are going into the apprenticeship system, even in the southeastern part of Nigeria. And most young people right now see them as role model and also look at them as also mentors. In this situation, you're saying that education is not a scam, but then looking at the entire educational system and going by the rhetorics coming from young people, can we then say that the Nigerian educational system of 6334 have overstayed its welcome?
Talking about children involved in one artisan project or the other, yes, I believe in innovation. Currently, we believe in innovations. We know education may not may not give you everything you need. Do you understand? Especially some of the things you learn theoretically, it's good for you to practicalize them. So those that are involved in one trade or the other, or in one skill or the other, we encourage them to do. But education, getting basic education is very, very important, and that is what we are clamoring for.
Well, Prof, I think Prof is moving away from trying to stylishly dodge the question, because then we have a lot of young people watching us right now.
Yes.
And this is the issues that has been raised by a lot of young Nigerians, especially on the social media platform. Now, they will tell you that we don't need to go to school to make it in life. Now, the mantra has been, I don't blow. And that has been a spontaneous narrative, even within, around the corridors of young people across the country. But looking at it deeply, Prof, the 6334 educational system in the country, is it still fulfilling its mandate?
It is.
Let's interrogate it. Is it still fulfilling its mandate? Now, recall that most universities right now will embark on boycotting or strike actions by the ASU and a few other, and NASU and a few other unions within the university. And this has thrown most academic calendars back in time. And also, the whole issue on carryovers usually affects students. Now, if a student is reading law, a student is reading medicine in this regard, the educational system of 6334, if it gets to school at the age of 18, the tendency that it will graduate at the age of 24, the chances is still very slim, because of all of these irregularities that tend to characterize the Nigerian educational system. In the light of this, Prof, are we saying that the 6334 educational system has not overstayed its welcome?
Yeah, it hasn't overstayed its welcome. Yes, there may be some lacuna in government policies towards education, but that doesn't mean that the 6334 had overstayed its welcome. I always encourage young men to pursue education, because it is the best legacy to fight against the ignorance of this world.
So, Prof, let's even move away from the 6334. Now, most parents in the northeast and, of course, the northwest will rather not send their children to education, and this figure keeps rising, especially from this region. And they believe is that Western education is a scam, and Western education is forbidden, and Western education is trying to corrupt the minds of the children. But looking at the reality of our educational system, how correct is this assertion?
Yeah, I stand to prove that assertion very wrong, and is one of the factors that contribute to out of school children, because of some cultural norms and beliefs that some parents have put in their children, which is not right, especially early age marriage. You know, there's some customs that believe in giving out their children at early age and the rest. Then some religious schooling that don't believe that formal education is best. So I don't subscribe to that assertion. You understand? I always believe that the formal education is still the best, and I encourage every parent to pursue it.
Well, Prof, when you say you want every parent to pursue it, the Western education, and you talked about the formal education, and
yes.
Of course you've talked about, but then, Prof, let's have you speak on the issues around the whole educational system in these regions that believe that education is not a welcome development. Are they right in this position?
they are not right, and that is why we have a lot of problem in the northern part of the Nigeria, for instance, where I hail from. Is if you look at the UNICEF report, you see that most of the out of school children are from the the certain percentage, the highest percentage of out of school children are from the northern part of the country, and it's as a result of this belief. So, and that is why sensitization is very important by government. There's a need to sensitize them and to make them believe that formal education is still the best.
So you don't think that the government should move away from sensitization? Of course, from let's even take the Fourth Republic, for example. We've been able to, the government government in, government out, have come out to say they've done sensitization. National Orientation Agency have come out to say, hey, they've done a lot of sensitization within the educational space. Shouldn't we move away from orientation at this point in time to have a concrete conversation and know the root cause, or perhaps implement an educational strategy even within these geopolitical zones that believe that Western education and the formal educational system is not meeting up to its own responsibilities?
Okay, as I earlier told you that poverty is one of the major causes of this out of school system, and I want to use this medium to thank our president, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, for the introduction and implementation of the education fund and this school feeding program that is going on. So it's one of those systems that help vulnerable children.
You mean the out of school children? A lot of critics have said that it tends to favor children in the urban community and doesn't trickle down to
meant for the vulnerable.
But a lot of critics have said that this out of school program does not trickle down to the rural communities.
That program is meant for the vulnerable, and one of my
and you think the vulnerables are benefiting actually?
They are benefiting. Yes, one of my cousins benefited, even last week benefited from it. So I believe the program works, and it's genuine. So I give kudos to the president for that.
And it's not a selective. It's not your cousin. Perhaps they might have read his name and know that he's a cousin of Professor Joseph.
Not at all.
And as such, they need to comply. Because a lot of critics have come out to say that these whole programs by the government doesn't trickle down.
No. It's not for the rich. It's for the vulnerable. And they are assessing it.
Have you been able to have you gone on the field to assess the impact of all of these school feeding programs by the president?
Yeah, with the little verifications are carried out, and I think it's working.
So, Prof, you've not gone down. You've not gone to the field.
Yeah, I've gone to the field, especially to access the physical facilities, especially the one put in place by the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory. That is His Excellency Nyesom Wike. You know, when he was the Minister of Education, you see how he transformed the educational system, at least most of the schools in the north. You understand? We saw his impact in the school, and when he came back as the Minister of FCT again, I have visited most of the school in FCT, and most of the schools are undergoing transformation. So, and I'm very happy about that, and that is what Ghana is doing. Ghana is spending more in school by building new schools, hiring teachers, taking it close to the vulnerable. And that is what this government is doing. So I think I'll commend this government for that. And I believe they may not get it 100%, but they will get there by God's grace.
But Prof, when you talk about the government doing magnificently well in the educational sector, coming from you as a professor.
Yes, with the policies
but then looking at the level of the Amajuris, even in the far north, can we also commend the government in this regard?
That is what I told you. You see, where the major causes of this problem of out of school children, when you mention all these almajiris, so these are people from the vulnerable, that are vulnerable to a lot of things, from the less privileged home, who cannot access this formal education, maybe as a result of poverty. Do you understand? So there's no way government can completely obliterate that, but they are working at sensitizing and ensuring that all of them will embrace this formal education that will help them to get out of poverty.
So, Prof, let's talk about the Universal Basic Education, the UBE Act,
yes.
Which is also declaring basic education and schooling free and compulsory, state and local government. Even that's what we call the government that is subnationals. But then, looking at the UBE Act in itself, and the UBE as an agency, is it fulfilling its mandate in decreasing the numbers of out-of-school children? Because year in, year out, the numbers tend to keep rising,
Yes.
even like you've rightly said. But
Yes,
in
sir.
this regard, is this organization and its act actually fulfilling its mandate?
Yeah, the organizations are doing their best, but their best is not good enough, so they need to step up.
So you think they are not fulfilling their mandate?
They are doing their best. I won't completely say they are not fulfilling
So
their
if
mandate.
the figures keep going up, as an educationist,
Okay.
well, as an educationist, let's bring this to your doorstep.
Yes.
You saying they are doing their best, but then the figures keep going up. How do we correlate
Okay.
this
So,
whole information?
Talking about the figures keep going. For instance, some out-of-school children, maybe that are going through certain challenges. Some of them get married, and the process they procreate. Giving birth to children, and it keeps recycling. So people give birth almost on a yearly basis. You understand? So the more they are coming into that poverty line, do you understand? The figure continues to increase because they've not been sensitized to embrace, or some of them were not privileged to afford this formal education. So the figure keeps increasing. So the government themselves need to set up, be on top of their game in order to reduce this menace.
So invariably, you're saying that the UBE, as a agency of government and
Yes.
also an act established by law, over the years, has not fulfilled its mandate.
Yeah, they've not fulfilled 100%.
So should it be overhauled?
No. It should be strengthened.
What do you mean by strengthened,
Strengthened,
Prof?
yes.
Looking at what do you mean by strengthened?
Strengthen the institution to do better.
Because I'm looking at the figures from 1999 till date.
Yes.
And the number of out-of-school children, especially from the UNESCO and UNICEF reports that is in front of me right now. The numbers keep going up.
Yes, as I rightly said.
we don't know what the figures is going to be for 2026.
Yes,
but categorically we can say if the poverty rate in the country keeps rising, we can attribute out-of-school children to a poverty rate. But then we have the Universal Basic Education Board that is saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that children return back to school. You're saying at this point, that Prof, that they are doing their best. In this regard, what does their best mean, Prof?
Yeah, their best may not be good enough. That is why I said you cannot be doing your best without achieving your aim. So, and you can't make policies without implementation. So, when policies are made, there's a need for them to do enforcement, which is that implementation, by ensuring that their aim is achieved.
So, when we have these figures keep going up, and you as a professor of education, it's not talking about overhauling the system. You're not talking about the even looking at the whole budget implementation and also budget distribution to the educational sector. Can we say that educationists are turning a blind eye to the level of out-of-school children that we have in the country?
You see, I've always advocated for education to be given it right place, giving it autonomy to operate. So I always encourage government to allow educational institutions to have its autonomy. So until that autonomy is granted to the educational systems, all these lapses and lacunas will be there.
So till we get to that point,
Yes,
right
sir.
now, educationists are turning a blind eye to the increasing numbers of out-of-school children in the country. Is that what, if I get you correct?
No,
Prof?
they are not turning blind
Because
eyes.
educationists are not speaking up.
Yes, they are speaking up.
so-
It's just that the implementation. So, okay, the lawmakers, for instance, the National Assembly need to promulgate policies. And I just gave you instances of some countries that made some policies that helps to cut, especially Burundi, cut 80 to 90% out of their school children. So our government can do the same thing. Our lawmakers, our National Assembly, they can implement policies that will help to grant autonomy to the educational institutions. So by doing that, I think all this problem will be a thing of the past.
Prof, let's even travel down to the schooling system, especially within the North Central. Of course, there are videos making the rounds on social media that a lot of students, even in Kwara State and traveling to even Oyo State, that's Ogbomosho, a lot of children are even running away from school right now based on insecurity concern in the Oyo State and Kwara State. Now, a few other states also, parents have refused to allow their children to attend education. In this regards, what's the alternative? Education is looking for an alternative in this regard, knowing fully well that insecurity is the menace of insecurity is throwing more children out of school. What education is doing in this regard?
Yes, I will encourage, I think, the education sector to devise a strategy.
So for now, there is no strategy.
There's no strategy, so there should be a strategy whereby you can put a program in place where children can learn online, even from the comfort of their home. Is very important, because keeping them completely out of school is not good for them.
Prof, the number of out of school children between going by gender, male and female, the numbers for the female tend to be higher compared to their male counterparts. I'm curious, so why is this so? Are we deliberately setting a gender bias when it has to do with educational system in the country? And if no, why is this the gaps in the figures keep widening?
Yeah, the male children, for instance, believe they could. I think when I was growing up, I had a cousin brother who was, I think, stopped in JSS3, and he said he can no longer further, that his vision is to go into this as a roadside mechanic, and that is what he's doing. He was enjoying it, but I'm sure he cannot compare that to those who go through the formal way of education. So a male child believes that they can do anything with or without education, that they can hustle to survive. Do you understand? So that is why we have more of them. But the challenge is not even about students going out of school, but it is the uneducated youth that are out there that have become a machinery in the hand of the bandits and the Boko Haram. You know, like the senior president said that every 20 million out of school children is a time bomb and a source of insecurity to the nation. So that is the challenge we have.
So, Prof, you're saying that the level of, because about 50% of the figures that was read out by UNICEF still plays about 60% of the figures read out by UNICEF, about 18 points, and also the 20 million out of school children right now. 60% of that figure tend to be the girl child. And at this point, my curiosity is even, that's why I'm asking, why female children? Is it that the Nigerian female genders are finding education unattractive, or the educational sector is right now doing what shouldn't be done in order to help the female child to be educated in this regard, or they are taking us back to the pre-colonial age where only the male child deserves education?
Well, I think I won't blame government for that. I may blame parents for that. In one of the books I wrote, Gender Equity and the Panacea to Nation Building, I advocated for equal right for a girl child and a male child. So there are some parents that don't believe in the education of a girl child. So I think in another book I wrote about leadership challenges in Nigeria, I specifically tagged parents as great leaders. So you see, most of the challenges we have in this nation, every good and bad leaders emanate from the family. So let's take it from that level. Some parents don't believe in the education of the girl child, which is very bad. So I think the major problem begins from the parent.
Oh, so in this day and time, you still believe that some parents don't believe?
Yes, I still believe, yes. So I still believe there are some cultural norms that encourage the children to get married before their time and the rest. So don't believe. There are some parents that don't believe in that. So there's a need to sensitize them to educate the girl child.
So what do you mean by, Prof, you keep talking about sensitization. In the light of sensitization, what do you mean by a sensitization? Looking at the fact that I just told you that the Ministry of Information and also the National Orientation Agency, year in, year out, keep going around even to different rural communities, educating the people. I'm not holding brief for them, just to put the record straight, but then the numbers keep going up. Like I told you, the UNICEF report shows that 60% of the 20 million out of school children in the country right now are female children.
Yes.
The girl child keep dropping out of school. Are we questioning the cause of all of this, or again the educational sector I've decided, or educationists like yourself, have decided not to speak in this regards?
Yeah, I will always encourage the educationists to speak in that regard. As I told you, I have spoken through one of the books I wrote.
You're just one in the media. You've not seen the report.
So then you're talking about the sensitization. So the national orientation is their duties to be doing it day in, day out. So they are not to give up. They are not to give up in sensitizing the people, educating the rural communities on the need for them to train the girl child. Is very important. So they can't run away from that responsibility. That is why that agency is set up. So they cannot run away from that responsibility. They should keep doing it. Yes.
Well, Prof,
until we get it right.
Prof, let's talk about the structure of our educational systems. Of course, every government tends to pride itself as building schools, renovating the infrastructures within the educational system. Of course, some governments, subnational governments, pride themselves as even creating a diversification when it has to do with the educational system across the country. But then, this does not even reflect in the number of out-of-school children. That's one. Secondly, this does not also reflect in the number of students that pass their WAEC, students that pass their what they call their JAM. Recently, university students that graduated from few universities across the country, and their signing out ceremony, were tagging themselves and telling you that they vow never to read a book. They vow never to ever go back to their masters. They will not do their masters. And all of these conversations and narrative keeps even becoming the trend for the day. Prof, what are we not getting right in our educational system? And could this be a factor why we are having more numbers of out-of-school children? Is book actually boring lately? Because the number of people that don't read tends to also keep increasing daily.
There's this saying that a hungry man is an angry man. Mexico and Brazil, for instance, implemented a policy, this direct cash transfer to families, poor families. So if our government can implement that, it will go a long way in helping. Because as I earlier told us, that poverty is a very big problem. There are parents that struggle to see their children through school, and some cannot even afford 3 square meals. So it is a challenge. It's a very big challenge. So if government can also look into that direction, I think it will help.
So, Prof, you're saying that the government should look into the non-reading culture of young Nigerians.
No, the non-reading culture, I think, is a personal problem.
But right now, it's becoming a national issue. Looking at it, because the number of people that read, actually, this is also reflecting in the number of students that pass their WAEC, going by the recent figures that we have for the last 5 years of students that wrote WAEC. I'm not even trying to even juxtapose that with people that even wrote JAM, even this year, last year, and in the last 5 years. Looking at it, is something wrong with our educational system?
Yeah, students that indulge in that may have a divided attention. When someone have a divided attention, you are pursuing education, you are thinking about money, how to make quick money is a big problem. So it's a very big challenge. So they cannot combine two at the same time.
So at this point, you don't think that Robert Kiyosaki's theory of retire rich, retire young, and also don't go to school is currently also playing out in Nigeria?
Yeah, those who believe that assertion may find themselves in that state, but I don't think it's the best for our educational system.
So how do we begin to address this concern of students that first, the books seems very strange to a lot of young people right now. If you drop a book on the table, I can guarantee you, Prof, that you will come back to find it there.
Yes,
it will not move.
I know.
Compared to other items that will be dropped on that table.
Yes.
And this is becoming a national concern. Of course, taking it away from also the books, a lot of young persons right now are having their own way of learning. Is our educational system, how do we address this concern? Is our educational system ready for the old transformation and transitioning of the generational gaps is this our educational system, is it reflecting and is it ready to address those concerns?
Then, thank you so much. The age of technology, of transited from, most sectors have transited from analog to technology. So most people have their mobile phone and they believe that everything they need is there. And especially this internet has created a lot of distractions for people, you understand, that make them have less interest in reading, which is also a big challenge. It's a very big challenge.
So there is no plans, there is no strategy by educationists like yourself to address those concerns?
Yeah, there's strategies, and the strategy is sensitization, because you said I shouldn't talk about, I'll keep talking about sensitization.
When you talk about sensitization,
people, keep
when you're
sensitizing
talking
people,
about sensitization and there's
yes,
no practical,
telling people,
there's
yes,
no practical demonstrations
yes,
to the sensitization, is it a welcome development?
Yeah, you're not going to put gun on their head. You understand? Someone who does not have interest in reading to read, but you sensitize the person, because like computer, for instance, is garbage in, garbage out. You understand? So you cannot give what you don't have. So, like I'm a Christian, the Bible says, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needed not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the words of truth. So how do you divide the words of truth when you don't study?
Prof, this is even getting interesting. You're talking about sensitization. I did mention that the NOA, National Orientation Agency, yes, I've been doing a lot of sensitization, and the figures keep going up. But then let's leave that conversation there and even look at what educationists are putting in place to practically address this concern. Prof, are you saying in general that there is no proposed plan, there's no proposed action, and there is no proposed policy in order to address this menace? Because this, I believe, is part of the reason why we are having these numbers keep going up, because a lot of young people, I want to believe, are losing interest in the educational system. There's no plan to address all of this concern. And if, yes, there is no plan, are we expecting more increase in the number of out-of-school children in the coming years?
Thank you. As I rightly earlier said again, that poverty is the major causes of all this problem, and I appreciated our president for the introduction and implementation of the Education Trust Fund, which is a way of encouraging. So if the government is helping to alleviate certain, let's say, poverty, a thing that could stand as a barrier for children that should pursue education, I see no reason why they will not embrace it. So those that refuse to embrace it, I think it's their own
so
problem.
You don't think that the educationists have been wicked?
No,
because
that policy put in place.
We cannot say that educationists, can we say that educationists are wicked?
No, education are not wicked, because the program,
this action of not even, I believe at this point, if the figures keep going up, as the people that have the children at heart, there should be placards, there should be some form of revolt, there should be some form of demonstration, even within the educational sector. But then the educationists like yourself have folded their hands, have refused to even speak out in this regard.
They've been speaking out.
But then if the speaking out is not reflecting in the figures,
yes,
is the speaking out enough?
Yes, because I could say that the educationists are somehow incapacitated, you understand, because when it comes to implementation of certain policies, it's done by the government. Do you understand? Now they've been clamoring for autonomy in education, for them to grant them an autonomy. So they cannot do that by their own power. So the educationist may speak on certain, they may have certain policies, program, proposals, and the rest, but the implementation of that thing is done by the government. That is what I'm talking about, lack of political will. So there should be political will in order to drive it.
Prof, looking at the cognitive, affective, and also evaluative orientation of which children learn in that cycle, if you take away the cognitive orientation, the affective orientation, then you want to now begin to evaluate the students and these children. They tend to be a one-legged system. Now, I'm saying that to say or to ask, if educationists are not pushing, and there's no proof that educationists like yourself are trying to even hold call the spade a spade, in order to ensure that there are diversification programs, there are more educational tools being introduced. There are more educational mechanisms being put in place. Won't these numbers keep going up? Again, I ask, our education is not being wicked to the Nigerian children if they do not and have not revolted against the system. You're talking about funding and implementation, but then implementation starts from somewhere. If people keep revolting and calling the government by its name, calling a spade, I believe the government would listen. You've mentioned President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He has prided himself as a president that listens to the plight of Nigerians. But when educationalists like yourself are not speaking up enough, the voices are not loud enough, is this not deliberate wickedness to the Nigerian children?
Thank you, my brother. They are saying that the educationists are not speaking up. I think it's not true. They are doing their best on daily basis through different programs and policies and proposals to the government. Do you understand? So, but to completely obliterate this problem, 100%, I want to tell you that they cannot do it, because I told you, I said, if those in the vulnerable area keeps giving birth to children, you understand, in that state of mind whereby some does not believe in formal education, so the figure will continue to rise. And you can't blame that on the educationist or the government. Do you understand? Because those that does not believe in education keeps giving birth to children, there's no way that the figure will not rise. The figure will continue to rise, but the government is doing their best to ensure that they cut these figures as whichever way they can.
Well, Prof, you systematically exonerated your colleagues from the whole conversation and tried to navigate the path of the conversation to the government. You've continuously done that, and you've exonerated the educationists, teachers as well from all of this. But then, Prof, finally, because I've been seeing that our time is fast spent, what's your strongest message to government, parents, and stakeholders on saving Nigerians' future through education?
Yeah, my number one message, and the message.
Your strongest message.
My strongest message is to grant full autonomy to the educational system. So listen to all the proposals, implement all the proposals by the educationists, and to ensure that poverty is tackled. Government need to tackle poverty, because poverty is the major reasons why most children don't go to school. Most of the children you see on the street hawking and the rest is as a result of poverty. Then the issue of insecurity, government they are doing their best, but they need to do more to ensure that they provide security for all our educational institutions is very important. And again, the issue of corruption and underfunding too should be tackled, which is another big problem. Then cost, when you talk about cultural norms, where some people do not believe in formal education, encouraging their girl child to go into early marriage should be a thing of the past. I think by doing that, we will get there.
Well, by doing that, we'll get there. It is, Prof. It's honestly what I want to say. Thank you so much, Professor Joseph Ahmed, for finding out time to be with us here on
It's my pleasure, my brother.
Well, viewers, how far we can go tonight on the show. Do not forget that you can leave your thoughts, you can leave your comments on our various social media handle. It's currently showing on your screen right now. And you can also download the Rapid TV app from your Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcast. My name is Godwin Sunday. Always remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do enjoy the rest of your night rest. Bye for now.